The biggest problem most real estate investors have is they don't know how to market themselves to investors. I'm sure you guys attract investors, but if you're ever going to attract at 10 times or 100 times the level you're doing, you need to understand the different stages so you can actually diagnose what's not working. This is how you get their attention. Your unfair advantage. Like, the reason why it's so powerful is because if you ever get called up impromptu to speak, you can immediately lean into your unfair advantage as a way of introducing yourself. Literally, my introduction is, my name is Marcin Drozd. I've raised well into 9 figures in private capital, and my team and I have done over 2 billion in deals. Wherever I go from there after that is wherever I want to go. So when you guys get very clear on your unfair advantage, it literally becomes like breathing. And all of us usually have a good story to tell, but until you articulate it so succinctly, you'll know people are paying attention. When people just like you've seen this in a room where you'll say something and all of a sudden everybody starts looking at you. And then when people are nodding, that's when you're getting people to kind of buy into what you're doing. And the other thing with the UFA is, if you're interested in speaking or getting onto podcasts or being asked as a subject matter expert to present on stuff, if you've packaged yourself well, you will literally get asked. I get phone calls from, real estate magazines, conferences, whatever, to come and speak because I position myself with a very specific set of topics. See, if you look at your unfair advantage, it's really composed of a few key components. You have your story. So your story is that unique journey and set of experiences that you personally have. The second piece is your why. So in other words, why are you doing it? So, with some humor, obviously, Dee and Dr. Vic were saying, well, they're getting bored. Obviously, they've had some success. So you can tell that there's a genuine sense of creativity and a need to keep themselves preoccupied. Maybe you're trying to leave your job. Maybe you're trying to create a legacy. Maybe you're trying to do something for your community. There's a why component that all of us inherently have. And when you combine those two, you end up getting your value proposition. Now, when you take that and you multiply it by the evidence or proof of what you just said being real, that's the magnifier here. But the real game changer for all of you guys here is when you compound the amount of evidence you have, it continues to level up your unfair advantage. That's literally, your unfair advantage is literally a culmination of these three things for your business. And the real difference for you, if you want to focus on anything, is once you get the baseline of your story and you get the baseline of your why, focus on getting the evidence or the proof. Like, just focus on the proof or the evidence, because that will literally compound it. It's like fishing with dynamite. It is the most potent thing you can do. That's why I say to people, if you're new to the business, go get a partner that has 20 years experience, because they have the evidence, they have the proof, they have the track record. You don't have it. You may have the first two components like I did in my early 20s, but I didn't have the proof or the evidence. So what did I do? I went to work with Ken McElroy at MC Companies. They're now 2 billion in assets AUM. They had everything. I just plugged into that with all the things that made me credible, and then everything clicked, and I was able to raise $20 or $25 million in the first 2 years, literally from scratch. How do you tell your story? Your story can be told in a variety of different ways. So the first one is in the form of scarcity. So in other words, what are the unique things in your life's journey that you've done that can be told in a way where only you've had that experience in that sequence? And you guys all have different stories, different times that you've done different things, and that's the uniqueness of it. Now, the more granular you can get in that storyline, the more scarce you are in the context of trying to compare you to somebody else. The reason why I always tell you guys to sell yourself, not your deal, is because there is nobody like you. And the better you are at articulating you and your unique skill set, the harder it is for someone to compare you to someone else. And if you have an investor that's going to leave you because this thing pays 0.5 point more or 1% more per year, good luck. The differentiation for you can be as simple as, building a business for real estate because maybe you're a tradesperson and that's what your differentiator is. Maybe you're a contractor. It doesn't have to be overcomplicated. Now let's talk about your why. So we talked about personal circumstances. All of you have personal circumstances that brought you to where you are. The next piece is the value creation. So in other words, how do you then convert that into value? Obviously, you guys are using that to serve your community. You have all kinds of things you can do with that based on your circumstances. And the relevance. So why is it relevant? Well, this is a popular thing in the US, but it doesn't actually exist in Canada. This is like such an obvious thing, but it fits because it solves a very clear need that you guys have identified, right? The last piece, evidence proof. Some of you may be struggling with how to provide proof. So here's a few ways to do it. Sustainability. So your strategy, prove to me that your strategy has worked. If Dr. V is going to be doing another development, he could be like, hey, this last one, here's the 3 reasons why it works. So this is part of our underwriting now, and they have an underwriting process. It's sustainable. They've proved it. They've made dozens or hundreds of loans in the same manner. Here's the proof that we've been paid back. That's evidence. That's an example. That's proof. It's proof of operating the thing that you're doing at a scale beyond where you are today. And then the last one that I'll mention here in a group setting is performance under pressure. So anytime you had a tight deadline, so if Michelle got up here and says, hey, I've worked in mergers and acquisitions and private equity, we've done over $1 billion in transactions, and in the last 24 months of my employment, I bought 29 companies. If that was a lead magnet, I'd be like, click. You understand? So there's that's the proof in that component there. So let's talk about packaging and sharing that unfair advantage, because I understand that some of you are sitting in the room and you're like, well, Marcin, I don't want to be on stage. I don't want to do this. I'm not good at this. I'm really good at this. Okay, fine. So take your story in the formula and apply it to the methodology that works for you. So the first one is writing it. Obviously, you can do blog posts, you can do social media, you can do case studies, and I'm going to connect all of this with actual hooks and CTAs and all that stuff. I just want to frame this stuff out for you guys. So that's the first one you can do. The second one is you can film it. So think about it in the context of YouTube or videos, client testimonial videos. Think about, for those of you who have joined M1, what's one of the first things we do when you have success? We ask you to film a testimonial. Why don't you guys do that with your clients, with your investors, especially when you're about to give them a check back? They give you a check for 100 grand, you give them a check back for 135 or $200,000. That's a good day. Say, hey, would you mind doing a testimonial for me? The next piece is speak it. So some of you guys, maybe you don't want to be on camera. The point is you prefer to speak. There's so many of these platforms out there where you can literally just speak and not have to be on video, and people will happily listen to you in the context of it. Visualize it. Some of you may have trouble articulating yourselves to other people, but you're really good at laying things out in a simple way. My video editor is fantastic, but for him to put his thoughts together out loud is difficult. He'll do it, but it's not his natural way of communicating. But if you guys see my videos, they're fantastic. He is a visual person. So whether it's infographics, videos, guides, all these different things, there's different ways you guys can lean into this stuff. Present it. Obviously, this right here is the last form. Now, for some of you, this is the most uncomfortable way, and I get that, but it doesn't mean you can't do this, because there's 4 other ways you can communicate to people without having to do this. And not everybody has to do this, because most people, this is their number one fear, and I get that. Now that you guys know the actual formula itself and a delivery method, because what this really is a way of you determining a delivery method of how to deliver the information. And the reason why I laid this out so plainly for some of you is because I've had people come up to me after and say, wow, Marcin, that's easy for you. You're comfortable on stage, do all this. This isn't the only way to do it. We have half a dozen other ways that we get leads. You guys just don't see it because the only one you see is this one. But there's a ton of other ways to do it without this. This is the second equation of the day, your UFA plus the value delivery, literally the webinar, the guide, the book, the course, the seminar, the assessment. Guys, it doesn't matter what it is. I can tell you, I've literally spent over $1 million in hard cost, like money out the door. And I learned that it didn't matter what the delivery mechanism was. All that mattered was the order in which I did things in. Trust me, it was a process for me. So I'm going to share that with you guys here today. When you take your UFA and your value delivery, like I said earlier, that is your value proposition. That is the thing that you package in the marketplace. You multiply it by a strong CTA. What's a CTA? Call to action. Right? What is the call to action? I'm going to share a bunch of do's and don'ts in the context of call to action, because trust me, once you see this, you will not be able to unsee it. My goal for you guys when you're on Facebook today, you'll be like, oh, that's a shitty call to action. That's a shitty call to action. That's actually pretty good. You guys have heard of RAS, right? Reticular activating system. So in other words, in your mind's eye, the thing that you pay attention to is the thing that you will notice everywhere. So for example, if you buy a new red car, you'll see red cars everywhere. If you get a new iPhone, you're going to look at everyone else's iPhone. So what I want to do is I want to ingrain this in your mind so that you guys start paying attention to what good copy, good marketing, good call to actions look like, because it'll force you to really step up how you look at things. Because it's one thing to go out there and do all the right things and get at events and speak at podcasts and all this stuff. But if you have a weak CTA, it won't matter. Now, if you look at the formula, the CTA multiplies and compounds your value proposition. So it doesn't add to it, it literally compounds on it. That's how important the CTA is. Now, taking that one step further is your hook. All of this is encapsulated in a proper hook. Why is that? Well, because if you don't get my attention, I don't care. I don't care that you bought 15 companies. I don't care that you've done over $1 billion in mergers and acquisitions. I just don't care. Because if your hook is learn how to passively invest in real estate, next, who cares? right? You guys understand how many times have you guys scrolled by things that has like really good information? And maybe you watched it by accident because you left your YouTube on while you left the room and came back and you're like, shit, this is interesting. But then you look at the hook and it was like, this is garbage. How am I watching this? When you're looking at your marketing, all of it, in my opinion, should be framed out with this exact formula. This formula is how I look at creatives. This formula is what gives me the clarity on how to put my packaging together. The reason why the hook was so important is because it drives the bus on everything. And the sad reality is because a lot of hooks out there aren't good, most content doesn't get looked at. There's a lot of people online that know how to create content, but don't actually know anything about what they're talking about. That's because they've overmastered the ability to get your attention, and they get your attention for you to only realize that they don't know what they're talking about. How did they get your attention? Because they knew this. Now, let me ask you guys a question. Do any of these look familiar? See if you've already grinning. Looking for investors to fund a real estate project. We have great deals available for qualified investors. Contact us if you're interested in learning more about our opportunity. I don't care. Now, if I know you personally, I will care because I know Stuart. So how do you create that goodwill with strangers? That is really the question. So again, to hammer this home, your value proposition in the context of your UFA and your value delivery will never get looked at if you don't address the hook. The second piece, if you're getting traction with people, but then no one's engaging, it's because your CTA sucks. That's really the way it works. And unfortunately, most people ignore these two things because early on they think, well, you know, my deal will sell itself. This thing's a no-brainer. Well, if that was true, how come it's not funded? It's not how it works. Here's how to work. I'm going to work through the hook and the CTA process with you guys in the context of the different people that you are. So whether you're a speaker, whether you're a writer, whether you're somebody who wants to say it, visualize it, here's some examples. So by the way, and you guys can have these slides too if you guys want. So write it, blog posts, how I raised $1 million for my first deal without any experience. That's a hook. CTA, download my free checklist to start your own capital raise. Click, I'm interested. Another one, case study, how I quit my job in 12 months using real estate. Download the full breakdown in my free case study guide. It could literally just be a case study, and it could be a 10-minute interview with you and your mom. You guys can create your own thing, and then you do it based on your unfair advantage. So it's you guys understand how no one can create that but her? It's compelling. You know, CTA, get the full ebook for free here. That's write it. So for those of you who don't want to speak, that's fine. Here's how you can write it, right? So you guys getting this? Like these are hooks and CTAs. And this is, I'm telling you right now, more important than anything else in the context of getting traffic with new people. Now, your information has to be good too, because if your information's garbage, people are going to fall off later, but you have to get their attention first. This is how you get their attention. Film it. YouTube videos. How I navigated the 2008 crisis and still delivered double-digit returns. Get my 3-step process. This is a version of what I'm going to create with our new fund, because I literally started in this business in 2008. So when I started raising capital, apparently the world was in a recession. Nobody told me that because we still raised a ton of money and we made a ton of money, right? So that's my unfair advantage because I started at that time, and therefore here's what I learned then and here's how it applies to you today. That's interesting. Click. Client testimonial videos, how my strategies worked for investors like you. Literally, if I needed another lead magnet, which we don't, we could literally combine all the testimonial videos we've done with our clients and cut it down from an hour to like the best 3-4 minutes. And then literally that could be a lead magnet. You guys can literally create a free video course. You can shoot 3 or 4 or 5 videos about how you underwrite, how you buy, how you look at multifamily, how you look at student housing, how you look at commercial. Guys, don't overthink this. You don't have to map this whole thing out. This is not complicated. If I asked you about accounting and your business and 3 ways business owners typically pay too much in tax, you could probably talk to me for an hour about it. Before I wrote the book, I created an ebook. Before I created the ebook, I had a 1-page handout. Before I had a 1-page handout, I was literally just trying to figure out which version of a handout people were paying attention to. I didn't just immediately dive headfirst into writing a book because that's a project. Obviously, Instagram, property tours, we talked about all this stuff. Speak It, podcast. I created affordable housing that transformed a community. Interview, how to revitalize communities. Audio guide, smart real estate investments. Visualize it, infographics. Here's another one, 6 steps to turn a distressed property into a cash cow. So maybe you've bought a distressed property. Maybe you buy broken properties. Maybe that's your focus. Maybe you're maybe you're doing what I'm doing where you have a distress fund and there's 3 or 4 things you look for to find distressed properties. That could be your lead magnet. You see how it's indirect, where it's not, hey, come buy things with me in Texas. I know we don't know each other, but come to like, that's not my initial conversation with you. It's, hey, like, here are the 4 or 5 things I look for in a distressed asset. Presented webinars, how I cracked the Miami real estate market, how I cracked the Toronto real estate market, how I cracked the Ohio market. Conference talk, your playbook for breaking into new markets. Maybe how real estate agents can crack a new investment market or something like that. You should definitely write that one down. So like these are the things that just, and the more you can tie it back to who you are, the more people are buying into why you're the right person to work with, because you frame the context of the conversation in terms of your capacity. You guys can take your unfair advantage and apply it to so many different methodologies. You guys don't have to figure this all out on your own, but what you do need, and what we do for you when you come on board with M1, is we do your UFA for you, because we have to package you. We do it for you because you don't know how to do it yet. And then this stuff it all kind of just plugs in, which is what you need.